Hello, my name is Karen van de Graaf and I'm going to demonstrate today how you go about producing a portrait with soft pastels. I've got a list of things that you'll need. A piece of preferably coloured pastel paper which has a nice texture. A picture to work from, which hopefully if you're watching the demonstration you'll have access to. We'll need some charcoal, just standard willow charcoal is very good. An everyday eraser, a plastic one is absolutely fine. You can cut it small so it can get nice edges. Some tape to stick the paper to a board. What else do I have? Oh yes, hairspray. Extra strength works good, and you'll need that at various points. What else do I have? Oh yes, pastels. So I have some pretty inexpensive pastels that I actually managed to pick up from Aldi, which are pretty decent. Some of the colours are a little bit bit bright, but they can be useful for backgrounds, and you can use them to mix with other colours. And they're quite decent. And I also have some very nice pastels. You'll find different people have different preferences with brands, etc. I happen to like Rembrandts. I like the softness of them. They're not as soft as some other brands you get access to, but I enjoy these ones, and the colours work really nice as well. So I'm going to get cracking and show you the first step, which is to work with the charcoal. Oh, hold on, get yourself a cup of tea as well. Useful. If you are thirsty, you can have a wee swig. Okay, so to start with, I've got a thin piece of charcoal, and I'm going to quickly draw the outline of this head here, very fast, not spending huge amounts of time, and trying to get some parts of the features in, and very quickly getting a thin line happening. And yes, that will do. We're just going to concentrate on the head and the neck. We might get a little bit of the top in. Okay, now I've got that quick outline, and I'm going to use a smaller piece of charcoal now, which I've snapped, and I'm going to use the side of this charcoal to allow me to shade in some blocks, because you'll notice there's quite a lot of dark around the woman's head. So we're going to get that in. Get a rough shape. I can smudge it with my fingers. I enjoy doing that. Some people think that charcoal's a bit of a messy medium. It can be, but if you're concerned about that, you can just place some newspaper underneath the place where you're working, and then it catches any of the small bits. So she's got some hair here. Most of it is light, but some of it gets dark towards the side, and some more dark parts here. So I'm smudging that as I go. You can see that, yep. And then I'm going to look at some of the features now. I'm using a small piece of charcoal, a thin bit again, and I'll shade in some parts of her eyebrows and some of her eyes, lines, etc. So this is just very quick to get some areas of dark defined and to get a rough shape of the head. Now, I don't want to spend huge amounts of time doing this because, well, we're here to talk about pastels. So I'm going to pause this. So the other thing you can do is use the rubber to remove some parts which should be light. So for example, in the nose, there's a section here. On the cheek, there's a big section, and so on. So I've spent a little bit of time doing that process already. So here's one I've got set up already. Now once you've got to the stage where you've shaded the face black and white roughly, it doesn't have to be exact at this point, then what we're going to do is spray it with hairspray to seal it, okay? And then comes the fun part. We get to use the pastels to get colour involved. The idea of the first charcoal stage is to get some tone happening so that when you come to colour, some of the work is done already for you. I like to work with darker colours more. There's this part of the cheaper pastels that's kind of a, well, it's a sort of a tan brown colour. So I'm going to start with that and place some of this on top, some of the areas which are going to be close to the darkest areas of our face. And you'll notice that I'm moving the pastel with a linear way. Some parts I'm leaving bare so you can see through to the dark marks that are underneath. And some are actually the paper as well, because the paper's an orange colour, which should help to get the face defined without me actually having to use colour on all of it. Some of the paper I use bare. If you can't get hold of orange, sometimes a grey is quite nice to work on as well, or white paper would work just the same. You just get a different outcome. So I'm moving this orange around a few different places, and yep, I'm putting some over there. Okay, so that's a good start. And then I've got a lighter colour. This is actually quite a bright orange. I don't really see that. So it's more of a yellow kind of orange colour. So we're going to put that on and see what happens. Again, I'm moving around the whole face, so I see a small bit there. I'm going to put some light parts underneath her eye. There might be some bits here. Okay, and maybe blend in this with some of the orange colour as well, so you're getting a mixture of orange and this yellow colour. And I don't want to use too much of that because it's quite bright. Another one of the pastels are quite good here are the blues. I quite enjoy using these in the background. This is from the cheaper set. So you'll notice in the picture there's quite a lot of blue in the background, which makes her head stand out quite well, because blue is quite well, it's a great contrast to orange. So I'm going to use that now and do some parts of the background. Well, let me just shade that in there. Use the side of the pastel. If somebody goes in her hair, that's no problem, because parts of her hair actually do look a bit blue, which is quite interesting. So I'm using the side of the pastel. You can maybe hear that. I'm using the actual side of the charcoal, the pastel, to move the pastel all over the paper. And I want quite a good amount of coverage on this section, so I don't want any of the orange showing through necessarily on this part. So I'm going to get I've got a slightly lighter colour of blue again, so I'm going to use some of that, and I might even use a light blue colour. What have I got here? It's this sort of sky. It's probably a light turquoise colour, because you'll notice there's a variation in the colour of blue used. So I'll just get some of the background worked in there with some of these pastels that are fairly inexpensive. So that's mixing. I'm mixing some of this lighter blue in with this darker blue, covering the whole area so it's locked in. And you can see that's starting to develop into something there. Right. I'll get some more of the darker blue in that section. So I'm really rubbing all this blue right into the paper, so I don't have any orange bits of paper showing in that section. So you can see the head, even with just that blue at the beginning, starting to stand out a bit. So I'm going to get my nice Rembrandt pastels out now, and something I like to use in a face quite often is a army green colour, I would describe it as. It's olive colour. And sometimes I like to use that in sections underneath the lip. So I'm going to make a few hatch marks with the green. A few hatch marks here with the green. And we can blend it later, but if I put quite a bit on, I see some in the round in our cheek, at the base of her cheek, maybe at the bottom of her eyes. This woman's face is quite interesting to me because there's so many lines and it's interesting to draw. So a few bits of green here and there. I don't want to go overboard with that, but it helps to bring out the colour of the face if I use small amounts of it at various places. Some people put some under the chin, so we can do some of that. Again, I'm using the side of the pastel sometimes, okay? So that's starting to look okay with that. It's probably enough of that green. I have a nice warm brown colour, which is a bit darker than the orange that came with the cheaper pastels, and it's quite good for skin. I like to use that in areas like the cheeks where there's maybe a redness in the cheek there, and we can use some on the side as well. And you'll notice I'm putting it on. It's a lot stronger. These pastels are a lot stronger than the cheaper ones. The colours are more pronounced, which is fun. So I might put some up near the eyebrow, and this would be good for parts of the nose. So I'm moving around the portrait and the face, putting this pastel colour in various places. Some lines, some of the lines I want to maybe use to soften the green in certain sections. So you'll notice I've put that on, and it's knocked the green back. The green's not so dominant now, but it's still there. Okay, and maybe a swoosh of this. I use the side of the pastel sometimes, a swoosh of this. Again, if we blend it in with the green, it becomes a dark brownish colour, which is quite nice. And that is looking, yeah, progressing nicely. Now she's got a fantastic colour lipstick on, and I happen to have a very, very good match really. It's this shocking pink colour, which is great. So we might use some of that on the mouth, and I might want to use that quite thinly in some parts. So some of the charcoal is going to work and do some of the job for me, because the charcoal is going to show through in some areas and still be very dark, which avoids me trying to darken this purplish pinkish colour, because the dark from the charcoal, if I don't cover the whole area, will show through and give the suggestion of a darker area for the mouth. So I quite enjoy doing that, and that's the point of the charcoal section, because it does some of the work for you already. Now I do have a white pastel that I use sometimes to blend the colour and lighten it. So you'll notice on the mouth, for example, that there's a lighter section on the lower lip. Now I've just put a big smear of white across there, which is a bit too much. But it's a good start, and then I can use this this pinkish pastel that I've had to blend over the white and work the two together. I'll use my finger to smudge that, and you can see that that's starting to look a bit like a lower lip there now. Yep. Okay, so that's a nice thing to do. I'm going to use this skin tone colour. It's very close in colour to the paper. It's a little bit darker. So again, I'm going to move around the portrait. I might want to use some of this in the eyes, some of this in the eyelids. It's a shade. It's 2 shades darker than my lightest colour that I'm going to use. So I keep that in mind. There's a lot of areas in the face which are very light, and some of them I want to keep the paper, and other parts I'll want to use a lighter pastel stills. Like for example, this area between her nose and the top of her mouth here is very light, as is the top of the actual top of her nose. But the side parts of her nose, we can use some of this pastel. And perhaps this side of her face, we can use this colour pastel as well. There are parts of her underneath her lip which are quite light. Before we get to their chin is exceptionally light, so I don't want to use too much of this pastel, but I smudge that in with some of the green because it softens the green a little bit. Okay, and then let me get this again. I'm using the edge of the pastel this time, and you'll notice that some of the shading work that I've done already has created some kind of form in the forehead without me having to do much in terms of colour, which is something I enjoy. Now our hair I know is white in a lot of places, but I have this grey pastel I'm going to use to start to shape some of the edge of the head. So we've got that here. I'm going to just use some of this grey to swirl down. She's got this fabulous curl here, right? And we're going to blend some of that in. You can see the frizzy parts. Now see if I lay the pastel on its side and use the texture of the paper to not fill the whole area in, you can see that it's easy to create those wispy bits of hair. And if you don't like what you've done, you can use a clean part of your hand to smudge the pastel off. And then we can shade that in. And parts of her hair are actually a bit green looking, so I might again use this olive green to put some of that in. And again, I want to cover most of this paper. I don't really want the orange showing through on her hair. There's a swoosh there. And I might actually go back to some more charcoal at this stage for the dark parts close to her face. Just because I've used the charcoal at the beginning doesn't mean I can't go back and use some more of it again. So I might decide to do that really. Get this dark bit in here next to the head and define that shape of the hair a bit better with the charcoal. Now you'll feel at a certain point that it's hard to get more material in. So we're not quite there at that step yet. Right, okay. So, oh yes, now I wanted to go a shade lighter with the skin tone colour, which is this it's very light pastel, which is fun to put some highlights in a few places where you want people to know there's a lot of light. So her nose, for example, is a good place to put this. And again, I'm going to smudge some of it so it's not so so it goes into the paper. So I'm going to pay attention to the line. Like a lot of things, you pay attention to the shape of the area, you pay attention to any lines. So for example, the eyebrows, you're going to pay attention to the shape, but also the line it takes. How far away is it from the eye? This part here, I'm using the edge of the pastel quite often. And some bits I'm going to leave unsmudged, and other bits I'll actually smudge. So this section here is quite light, so I want to use that light part. And again, I'll smudge some of this, because it's not necessarily the lightest part of the face. And I'll smudge some of that. This is very light. And we've got a light area on the chin too. There we go, and we can move this area. So I'm using a mixture now of using the edge of the pastel and trying to work it into some other parts of the pastels which have already been set down. So you can see the face beginning to take some form now, and I'll continue with some of this light pastel before starting in with some of the detailed areas of the features. So let me do a section here. We'll do a bit of this, and we'll get some more grey. We'll define this hairline a bit better. That'll make the head easier to do once we've got a bit of hair in. Now this actually is going to blend into the blue on this side, so we're going to allow that to happen and suggest some individual hairs and leave it smudged into the blue. Maybe bring some of the blue up into the grey as well, and I just use my finger to achieve that. You'll notice that at the top of the hair, at the very top part here, we've got a lot of light, so I'm going to get the white pastel on its side again, and it looks too much to begin with. But what I do is I blend a little bit here, a little bit out the way, a little bit towards the white, maybe blend the white itself, and leave some of it appearing there, and that gives quite a good effect for hair very quickly, just using your finger, you know. And we're going to move that down this way, and we could get a small highlight in here. Not much. We'll get the grey pastel again, and I've got that. I'll just move this lid out of my way. Okay, and again we're going to let a lot of this blue just be involved in the hair, because that's how the image looks. Now some of this side here needs darkened, so I use a dark brown colour occasionally on faces too. It's quite dark. And I want to show you that maybe I would just do some hatches, so very small lines close together, to achieve something here where I can still see colour underneath, but it's darkened that section quite well. And then sometimes I might smudge some of it and leave some of the lines visible, and I find that quite a satisfying effect. We want an area under the chin again, which is quite dark, so this dark brown I have in my hand is quite useful for that. And even going back, as I did before, to the charcoal, because right under our chin is a very dark area indeed. So some of the charcoal I'm going to smudge with the dark brown, because the dark brown doesn't seem quite dark enough. And I mean, I have a standard pack of pastels. It's I don't know how many pieces it is, 20. Maybe it's it's 30 half sticks. It's a set, you know, but you don't maybe have a desire to have all the pastels in all various different tones and colours, because you can mount up when you have a huge collection. So you can smudge charcoal into the colour to make it a bit darker. You can smudge white into some colours to make them lighter. Now again, I'm going to use this skin colour that I have to put down some information on this other section of the neck, and I'm just rubbing that into the paper to make sure it gets right into the grainy bits. And what else do we see here? We might see a flash of pink. Let's put that in. Flash of the pink top down here. Okay. Now it's not just pink on its own, so I'm going to get the charcoal involved and use some line to hatch some places in with the pink, and then I'll use my hand to smear that in. And I'll get the dark brown for part of that neck as well. Okay, so now I could spend a good long time going into detail with some of the details on the neck, but I want to show you a little bit of the eyes before we run out of time. I'm going to go with this bluish colour. She has blue eyes, probably not quite this colour, but taking a colour high to start with, we can calm it down a little bit by using an opposite colour. So I can get some orange in here and see what that does, and smudge that a bit, right? Oops. And I'm going to use my charcoal to get some of the detail of the eyelashes. I don't want to do too much of that, just suggest that, and get a pupil in. Now I find that using white in the pupils, in the eyes, is way too much, so I often use this grey colour to indicate the white of the eye. And it's a little bit more, it's a little bit softer than using white, because a lot of time the pupil isn't actually white. There we go, we've got a grey happening in there, and I'm going to again get charcoal out to define this eye in more detail, and we'll get a pupil and some of them more. That's it. Now the other thing is to define maybe some of the nostrils in some detail. This shady bit is actually still just charcoal, but I'm going to put some of the dark brown colour over that, just to smudge that in. And a section here is quite dark, so we'll do a little bit of hatching with some lines, some smudging. And we want to let people know where the edge of the nose is. Again, I'm using the edge of this brown pastel, and I might soften some of that line. We can put some lines in here for the smile lines. The bits of the mouth which are darker, again I can put some more charcoal down in this area to define some parts of the mouth. This lady's got an interesting face because she's kind of got a downward smile, right? And then we can put this into the nose, the philtrum area there, and there we go. Got quite a lot of colour happening, and yeah, I think we'll get some more grey highlighted parts in the hair, maybe get some more of the light blue colour suggested inside this area of hair, along with the green. Let's get some more of that. I'm going to soften this line, it's looking a bit harsh. Let's get some more of the peachy colour in there to take some of that out, and perhaps even some of this dark brown just underneath the bottom lip to show that that area is quite a dark section. Yeah. So I'll move this closer so you can take a look. Now I might, with more time, I haven't put in some eyebrows, so I'm going to do that as quickly. I'm going to use a dark brown pastel and perhaps again a bit of the charcoal to indicate the eyebrows. There's some there. There we go. And if I feel that the paper is saturated at any point and I'm struggling to put more pastel on, I find that if you spray the drawing again with the just put some lines in here. This section here is a little bit lighter. If you spray the whole spray the whole picture again, then you will be able to get more pastel on top of the pastels that's becoming quite difficult to get more onto. This is getting quite heavy here. So if I were to spray this, I'll just show you. With some hairspray, it all goes really dark and looks. Once it dries, then you're able to place more pastel on top of the picture to adjust some other parts of it. So I hope you enjoyed that demonstration, and I look forward to seeing some of you next week. Thanks very much for watching. Bye, my name's Karen.